All right, so we're going to be recording this training, so once it's over, I'll be providing Karina a link with today's recording so you guys can go back and watch it on demand at your convenience. So what I want to point out to you is I showed you in our last training how to create a webcast. So as your team starts creating the webcast, they'll be listed here on the My Webcast page. So this is essentially your webcast library. And so this was actually the webcast we set up in our training the other day. So I'm going to go ahead and open this webcast. And whenever you open the webcast, the first thing you'll come to is the overview page. And just to kind of remind you of some of the key important information on this page is the event ID. So anytime you have to reach out to On24 for technical support or emergency phone support, like if you're experiencing a live event emergency, the event ID is something you're going to always want to know or know how to access or maybe have printed out. So as a best practice, one thing that I recommend is that, especially when it comes to the day of the live webcast, is whoever the producer is, have maybe print out this overview page because it has all of the important information on it, such as the event ID. It also has the dial-in number and the passcode that the presenters are going to need in order to dial into the phone bridge. So on the day of the live webcast, there's three things that the presenters are going to need. The first one is going to be the dial-in number and the passcode, as I already mentioned, but also they're going to need access to the present URL. So you would need to copy and paste this maybe in your calendar invite or email, however you plan on sending out that information to your presenters. So those are the three things: present URL, dial-in number, and passcode. Now, this phone bridge that you guys will be using for the live webcast is not going to be open or accessible until 30 minutes before the live start time. So in this example, you can see that my webcast is set to start at 9 a.m. So I want all of my presenters dialed in and ready to go at 8:30 for the pre-call, because you'll have 30 minutes to get all the presenters on the line, go over any last-minute details, and just make sure everything is planned and accordingly. So just know that this dial-in number, like I said, will not be available until 30 minutes before the live webcast. So with that said, you are welcome to do rehearsals as far in advance as you want, but you're going to want to make sure you provide the presenting team with your own phone bridge for rehearsals, because we don't provide the phone bridge just for dry runs or rehearsals. So I'm sure you guys already have a conferencing vendor that you use, or you have your own conferencing methods. So just make sure that for the rehearsals you provide your own phone bridge for that. Now, to log into the presenting tool, which is PMXD or Presentation Manager XD, it's the same thing. You can either launch it from here on the overview page, or if I'm a presenter, I can simply click on the present URL and get to it as well. So PMXD, which I'm about to show you, this is our presenter tool. So this is what the presenters are going to be logging into and using for the live webcast. And it's pretty straightforward. You can see that all you would need to do is enter your first name and last name and your email address. And you'll notice that I have three different user roles to choose from. The first one is the producer role, and that person is going to have full control. Think of them as like the highest level of access, basically. So there's not anything that the producer can't control or access within PMXD. One person needs to be the producer, because that person is going to be in charge of starting and stopping the live webcast. So you only want to designate one person as the producer, and it is mandatory that you have at least one producer. Everybody else can log in as a presenter or a Q&A screener. The difference between the Q&A screener and the other two roles is that Q&A screeners cannot push slides to the audience. Producers can push slides, presenters can push their own slides, but the Q&A screener is really there just to kind of be in the background to answer questions. Obviously they'll be able to communicate with the other team members, but that's the big limitation as a Q&A screener. You cannot push slides. So again, one person is the producer. Everybody else can log in as a presenter or a Q&A screener. If you're not sure what role to choose, if you click on this link here, it gives you an overview of each role, but again, the most important thing to remember is that the producer is the only person that can access the Start Live button. If you wish to password protect either of these user roles, you can do that by clicking on the security settings. And at that point, you would just enter your Webcast Elite login credentials, and then from there, you'll be able to set a password for all or one or the other. It's whatever your preference is. Also, a lot of time presenters may ask you, well, which web browser should I be using? Is it okay if I'm on a Windows machine or a Mac? And all of that information is here in our system requirements. So it may not be a bad idea to include this in your email to the presenters as well, along with the present URL and the dial-in number. So that way they know ahead of time, what web browser is compatible. All right. So any questions on how to get to this screen or what you should log in as or anything of that nature? All right. So I'm going to actually log in as a producer. And guys, I forgot to mention this before we got started, but you'll probably notice that at the top of the screen where the icons for Join Me are located, there's a little talk bubble. So when you click on that talk bubble, you can enter your questions there. So I'll be sure to answer them as we go. So you don't have to wait till the end to ask a question. So as I'm going through the material today, feel free to submit your questions through that little talk bubble there, and I'll address them as we go along. All right, so as you can see, whenever you and your team members log into PMXD, by default there's going to be two windows that will open. It'll be the live view window and the team chat window. And so I'm going to minimize those for now because we'll come back to that. But here in the bottom in the control panel, these are the tools that you and your team members are going to use to manage and present during the live webcast. So this setup window is only accessible if you're logged in as a producer. So in other words, if I had logged in as a presenter or a Q&A screener, I wouldn't even have this setup link as an option. But the setup window is where the producer will go to upload the slides, where they can upload video clips for the presentation. You can also set up your poll questions. So to upload your PowerPoint, you would just simply click here, and you would select the PowerPoint that you have saved on your desktop or wherever you have it saved. And I'm just going to upload one really quick. All right. And then so here, while this is converting, it'll let you know that you can navigate away during the conversion process. So while that's processing, I'm going to go to the video clips. So if you wish to show a video clip during your webcast, whether if it's a pre-recorded demonstration or a quick commercial you want to show, whatever the case may be, these are the specs that you want to upload it at. So the video clips have to be in an MP4 or FLV format, and we ask that you keep the data rate around 500 kbps. The reason why we give you that number is that is going to help minimize any bandwidth issues. So if you do have somebody in your audience that has a lower bandwidth, they won't have to sit there and stop and watch the video buffer, continuously. If the video that you upload is more than 500, it'll still allow you to upload it, but just keep in mind, like I said, if you have people that aren't on strong internet connections, they may run into some buffering issues while the video is playing. So I'm going to go ahead and upload a video clip just so you can be familiar with how this will look. So let me do this really quickly. All right, so it's going to upload, and you'll just have to be patient with it and let it finish uploading. And then once that's done, I'll show you some configurations that you can do for the videos. Brenna asked a great question. So can you do this, uploading slides and video clips, while you're setting up the console? And you can. So Brenna, I know you were on the call on our first call, and you're absolutely right. This is actually just duplicate functionality. So you can either upload the slides and video clips while you're setting up the webcast and Webcast Elite, or you can do it from within here in PMXD. So this is just duplicate functionality of what I showed you on our first call. So when you are uploading video clips, you'll see that our system is going to automatically detect a couple things. It's going to detect the size of the video, the length of it, and then the data rate. So again, this is the number that you want to try to keep around 500 or less. And then, of course, the audio that is attached to the video is going to play automatically. By default, anytime you push out a poll question or if you play a video, it's going to play in the slide area for the audience. So let me kind of show you what that's going to look like. So if I open up the preview URL, so again, I'm going to my webcast URLs and I'm opening up the preview URL. This preview URL is going to give you a preview of the audience console, so you can test out the functionality and the layout to make sure everything looks the way that you want it for the audience. So whenever you are pushing out video clips or poll questions, they're going to appear here in the slide area. Now, you do have the option of pushing out a video and having it play in a pop-up window. So what that would do is just when you push out the video, it's going to open it up in a separate window in the console. You can certainly do that. The only thing that you might want to take into account is the pop-up blocker. So if you are going to be pushing things out through a pop-up window, you might need to give your audience just kind of a verbal cue to say, hey, we're pushing out a video, just want to give you a heads up so you don't have any interference from the pop-up blockers, because usually they'll have to allow it to open. Also, another thing to consider if you are doing a pop-up window, the window that you open it up at, you want to make sure it matches the dimensions of the video. So in this case, I want to change the width to 852. So that way the window that it opens up in will play large enough so it doesn't cut off part of my video. All right, and you can see that this PowerPoint slide that I uploaded completely overrided the one that I had before. So that's how this works. So when you upload your slide deck to our platform, it has to be finalized and everything has to be the way that you want it, because once you upload it, you're not going to be able to make edits to your PowerPoint from within our platform. So, for example, if you come across a slide that has a typo on it, you would have to open up your file in PowerPoint, fix your typo, and then re-upload your slide deck. All right, so next I want to talk about poll questions. So you can see that I've already added some poll questions. And whenever you set up a poll, there's 3 answer formats to choose from. The first one is multiple choice single answer, so that would be yes, no, true, false, or they can simply just select one choice from a list, or they can select multiple answers, or just type in a free text. So those are the 3 answer formats that you have to choose from when it comes to polling your audience. And like I said, those poll questions, when you push them out to the audience, are going to show up in the slide window for the audience. You can always add as many answers as you need to, but notice that with these poll questions, when you set up a multiple choice answer, you have this option to exclude the poll results from the live audience. So you can do this one of 2 ways. If you do intend on sharing the poll results with the audience, you can hide all of the poll results altogether, or you can pick and choose which answers you want to exclude from the audience view. So those are the 2 options that you have. But it's pretty straightforward. You would select the poll tab and click on Add Poll, type in your poll question, select your answer choice, and then type in your answer options. And if you need to add additional answers, you can do that by clicking here. All right, and then here in the last setup, or in the last tab, is the URLs option. So in our last call, I showed you how you can add a resource list widget to the console where you can include links, PDFs, PowerPoint, whatever you would like to do. So you can also push out URLs through the setup window here. If you decide to push out a URL during the webcast using this tab, what that's going to do is force the URL to open in a new window for the audience. And some people like that, some people don't, but again, you just have to keep in mind the pop-up blockers. So you might have to, let them know that you're pushing this out, so please allow the pop-up so they can see it. Great question. Is there a limit to the number of choices in the poll question? There is not. There's no limit on how many poll questions you can add or how many poll choices you can add as well. The only thing I will say to be mindful of is if you are going to have a poll question that has lots of answer choices, I would recommend practicing pushing out that poll question. So let's see, that one was what products are you currently using? So let me go to that poll question in my storyboard real quick. All right, so here's a poll question. What I would do is if you are going to have a lot of answer choices, like I said, since these poll questions are going to be displayed in the slide area, you want to make sure that all of your poll questions are going to be visible. So, for example, I had a client who one of their poll questions to the audience is, what country are you attending from or dialing in from? And they had a list of like 20 different countries in their poll question for possible answer choices, and the problem is that they had so many answer choices that when they pushed the poll question out to the audience, those answers towards the bottom they couldn't even see in the slide area because there were so many of them. So not that you would have a question with 20 different answer choices, but if you did, it might, at that point, you might want to consider pushing out the poll question in a pop-up window if you plan on using a lot of answer choices. So to change that, you would just go to the display for that particular poll question, and you can change it to a pop-up window. So now, by changing that poll question to be displayed in a pop-up window, it's going to pop up actually in a little window on the console. So it usually overlaps the slide area when it goes through. All right, so any other questions about the setup window before I move on? All right, so here at the top you can see is our storyboard, and this is basically all of the presentation content. So you can see you get a thumbnail view of all the slides, the poll questions that you create, any video clips that you upload are going to be visible here in the storyboard. Any URLs that you set up will be visible here. So this is basically the roadmap to your presentation. Anybody that's on the presenting team, regardless if you're a producer, presenter, Q&A screener, everybody's going to see this storyboard. However, only the producer can open up the storyboard organizer, which is this link in the upper left-hand corner. So if I click on that link, you can see that this is all of the elements I have for my presentation. So I can drag and drop the order that I want them to be in, and you just simply select an element and then drag and drop it where you want it to go. Also, you have the option of hiding any elements that you don't need or don't want the audience to see. So I told you earlier how you can hide the poll results altogether. This is how you would do it. You would hover your mouse over the element you want to hide, and then you can see that you've got this little downward arrow. If you click on that and then click hide, it'll gray that out and tell you that's hidden. So now the audience isn't going to see the poll results at all because I've hidden it all together. So the nice thing about this too is any changes that the producer makes is going to be saved automatically. So if Karina logs in and makes changes to the storyboard and then her presenters are going to log in, they'll be able to automatically see the changes that she makes. So again, this is the storyboard organizer, and this is only accessible if you're logged in as a producer. All right, so now let's move on to the live view window. And so you can see that as I begin opening these windows, if the window is open, it'll be highlighted in blue like you see here. But the live view window represents what the audience is looking at. So you can see that this red live marker is on my title slide, which is why it's being displayed here in the live view. So the nice thing about this too is it's going to be a shared experience. So if I'm the first presenter and I'm going to start presenting, all I have to do is click this yellow next arrow to start moving through the slides. So I've got my housekeeping slide. Once I'm done with that, I'll move on to my agenda. And all I'm doing is moving slide by slide by slide by clicking this next arrow. If you have to go back, you can click on the previous button. But if you do decide to play a video, you push it out just like you push a slide. You click on the yellow next arrow, and once you get to that video, which is currently now in my live view, it automatically starts playing. So this video is 1 minute and 43 seconds long, and it's going to start playing. So everybody will be able, all of my presenters will be able to sit here and watch it. And then after my video, maybe I want to do a quick knowledge check and then do a poll question. So I'm pushing out the poll. After my poll question, I'm on to my next slide. So that's how it's going to go. So if you do have to move or jump out of order, you can do that as well. So if you decide that you need to skip over a slide or skip backwards, whatever the case may be, you can do that by clicking on the element in the storyboard, and once you select that element, notice that I get a push to audience option. So now if I click push to audience, now we're going to jump to slide 8, which is what you see here. So you just go in order, you click the next arrow, but if you do have to jump out of order, you can select an element and then push it to the audience. Also, I want to talk about animations. So if you do decide to use animations in your PowerPoint, you can see that our system will detect it automatically. And basically, it's going to count through the animations. So just like you're pushing out your slides, you have to push out your animations using the next arrow. All right, so if you click on the next arrow, you can see that I'm now on animation 2. If I click it again, and all I'm doing is clicking through my animations, which on this particular slide, it's things fading in and out. So this is animation 6. If I click it again, it's going to disappear. And then now that I've gone through all of my animations, when I click next, we're going to be moving on to my next slide. So we did have a question coming in. If you click next after a poll question slide, will it automatically close the poll? And it will. So that's a good thing to know ahead of time. So great question, Katrina. So if you are going to be pushing out a poll question to your audience, once you click off that poll question and move on to the next slide, it's going to close the poll. So one way to make sure you give people enough time to answer that poll question is by using the preview window. So bear with me for a moment because I need to show the results in order to show you what I'm talking about. So here's my poll results. So let's say that you push out a poll question. If you want to preview the results before sharing them with your audience, you can easily do that. So you open up the preview window from this control panel here, and then you select the element you want to preview. So with the poll results, you can see that when it comes to previewing the poll results, you're going to get a total number of attendees who have submitted in addition to exactly how many have. So it'll tell you, 150 out of 200 have submitted. So this is a good way, if you do plan on showing the results with the audience, you can open up the results in the preview window and just get a feel for how many people have answered. And if you don't want to show the poll results, you don't have to. You can always just skip over it and then push the following slide out to the audience. So that's another option that you have as well. All right, so that kind of concludes the live view and the preview window. The last thing I'll say about the live view is you'll notice I have an option here to view my slide notes. If you like to leave yourself slide notes in PowerPoint, that's perfectly fine. You can view them here in PMXD. The audience cannot see your slide notes. Only those of us that are logged into PMXD will be able to see them. So you don't have to worry about the audience being able to view those. So you can open those up just by clicking here on the live view window. All right, moving down the line is the Q&A window. So this is how you're going to manage the Q&A. So when questions start coming in, it's just like your email account. So when you get an email, everything goes to your inbox. Same thing here. Anytime a question comes in, everything is going to come to the inbox, and the number that you see here in the parentheses represents how many unanswered questions there are. So I'll kind of show you how this process will work. On the day of the live webcast, remember your audience is watching everything from the audience console, which is what you see here. So here's going to be their Q&A window. So they're going to ask a question. When will this product launch? So as the audience starts submitting their questions, they'll type them in and they'll click submit. And this is in a different language, but once they submit their questions, then from there, it's going to pass over through to the Q&A window here. So questions attendees are asking their questions through the console, and they're going to come through here to the Q&A window in PMXD. So the questions, when they come in, everything is given a priority of medium, so you can prioritize them from high to low. So if I were to mark a question as high priority, it's going to jump it to the very top of the list, and vice versa if I mark it as a low priority. When the questions come in, you can answer them a number of ways. The first option would be just to simply type in a written response and send it back to that attendee. So here's my written answer. You have to select the question first to answer it, and then type in your answer. And then if I click send, it's going to go right back to that attendee. If it's a question and answer that you want everybody to know, you can also send it to all of the webcast attendees. So I don't know, we'll just call this test question. So notice that I'm actually able to create my own questions ahead of time. So that's another helpful tip to kind of save you guys time, is the presenters can create their own questions ahead of time by clicking on Add Question. So anybody can see that. The audience members cannot see who is asking what questions are submitted. They have no idea. They are not privileged to that kind of activity. So that's only viewable by those of us that are logged in to PMXD. So if this question comes in, and if that's something that I want, if I want to send to everyone, I can click Send to All, and it's going to ask me, are you sure you want to send this answer to all your webcast attendees? You can click Yes. And then now, my audience is going to be able to see that question and answer. So anytime you send back a written answer to your audience, this is how it's going to display for them. It's going to show the question in bold, and then below it, it'll show the answer in plain text. So everything's kept in this Q&A window, so they can scroll through and see it. So you get full control of who sees what question and whether or not you want to share that question and answer with everyone. Let me add another one real quick to show you. You can also push questions to the slide area. So if it's a question you want to kind of make a discussion point or make it a focal point, you can push that question to the slide area, and it'll ask you, are you sure? You can click Yes. And so now when you push the question to the slide area, here in just a minute you'll see it refresh, but there's my question. So that's how it'll display for the audience. Now notice that as I'm answering these questions or pushing them to the slide area, anytime a question, if you see it in italics, that means that it's been answered or it's been addressed. So to kind of help keep this Q&A window clear, you have the option of hiding the answered questions. So in that case, the only thing that will be displayed here would be the ones that you still need to answer. So that might help you guys out, especially if you have a lot of questions coming in. Okay, so someone asked also, how do you get the slide back to the slide area if you push a question? All you would have to do at that point, if you want to push the slide, you would just go back to it in your storyboard and click Push to Audience. And then so now they would be here in just a second when it refreshes. They'll see my slide again. Also, another popular way, which I think most of you are going to be doing, is just answering the questions out loud. So as a presenter starts answering the question out loud, you can simply just come in and mark it as answered, and then that way, we record who marked it as answered, so you can see who's marking the questions. Another option that you have, and you kind of saw I've already done this, is that you can create folders just like you do on your email account for each of your presenters. So if I have multiple presenters in here and I want to kind of come up with a system to organize the questions as they're coming in, as questions come in to the inbox, I can literally drag and drop them into these folders. So you can see here that Mandy knows that she has one unanswered question that she needs to address. That's just for her. So that's another tip that you can use to help you sort the questions. And I just created the folders by clicking the plus sign, and then if you click the minus sign, it'll delete the folder. And you can see here that you also can send questions to trash if you want. All right, any questions about the Q&A? People can be logged in as a presenter, producer, or Q&A screener to see the Q&A window. So regardless of what role you choose as you log in, everyone will have the option to view the Q&A. One thing I want you guys to be mindful of is that if you have the Q&A window minimized like I do now and people are asking questions, it's not going to alert you. There's not going to be a flash or a little icon that appears. So if you don't have the Q&A window open, you're not going to see what's going on as far as the Q&A goes. All right, moving right down the line is the team chat. So this team chat window is going to be how you and your team members are going to be able to communicate, before and during the webcast. So, let's say you have presenter A is going first and the audience is having a hard time hearing them because they're not speaking loud enough. The audience members are pretty vocal and they're going to tell you, can he speak up or can she speak up? I can't hear them. So if that's the case, if you start getting those kind of questions in through the Q&A, I can tell that presenter, hey, through the team chat, hey, they're having a hard time hearing you. Can you speak up? Or, we've got 2 minutes left. We need to start wrapping it up. Or, we need to go ahead and move on to our next presenter. All that communication, that's really what this tool is for. But you can say whatever you want, whatever you need to say. But it's really straightforward. You would come in and type in your message here in the box and click submit, and then it'll appear here in the chat log. So you notice that by default you're going to be chatting with all the presenting team, but if you wanted to, you could also send private messages. So if all of my presenters or all of my team members are logged in, I could actually select their name from the list, and at that point, once you select someone's name to send them a private message, their name's going to appear here, chatting with, and then it'll show, chatting with Ashley or chatting with John. You know it's a private chat because anything that's in red is a private message. So you can see that blue is the public messages and red is going to be the private messages. Best practice is to have the team chat open whenever possible so that way everybody can still communicate even during the live webcast. But if you do happen to have the team chat minimized and someone sends you a private message, it'll alert you. So if it's just public messages that everybody's sending back and forth, it's not going to alert you unless somebody actually sends you personally a private message through the team chat. Okay, so great question. So Karina asked, can you show how we can send a broadcast message to the audience? I would recommend using the Q&A for that. So if there is a message you would like to send to the audience, you could create that as a question and say, I don't know, let's say, please feel free to contact us at this email address. So if that's a message you want to send, you can save that question to the inbox and then just answer it and then send it to everyone. So that's how you can use the Q&A window as a chat feature, but also if you need to send a message to the entire audience. You could just type in the question yourself, and then when you go to answer it, make sure you click Send to All. All right, so here we have the attendee list. One thing that's important to know is that this list does not automatically refresh. So you would need to click Refresh List in order to really get an up-to-date count for who is here. And it'll give you the grand total here in parentheses, and then you can sort the attendee list based on first name, company name, or their login time. If you have somebody that logs in that shouldn't be there, or let's say a competitor logs in and you don't want them watching, you can select their name from the list and then click Block Attendee. If you block someone, it immediately removes them from the webcast, and they'll receive just a generic message stating, your access to this webcast has been denied. Please contact the organizer for more information. So that's the message that will appear. All right, so saving the best for last. you can see that I have this start live here at the top, and it's currently in a pre-live state because you can see right now that this event is not going to start until 9 a.m. on July 31st. So about 15 minutes before the live start time, so in this case it would be 8:45, this Start Live button will turn green, and that's just a visual to let you know the system is queued and ready to go. So at that point, all you would need to do is press Start Live. You're actually pressing the words Start Live and not the button. I know sometimes people get tripped up on that. So when the presenters give the go-ahead that they're ready to start, the producer is going to press Start Live. And you only press it once. So you got to make sure everybody's ready to go because there's no pause button. So you start it one time when you're ready to begin, and that's it. Once Start Live is pressed, all the presenters and anybody that's dialed into that presenter phone bridge, they're going to hear an automated message, and it's going to say, "You're now being connected to the audience stream," and there's going to be a beep. Once you hear that beep, anything you say after that beep is going to be recorded and heard by the audience. So that'll be everybody on the line, as far as all the presenters on the line will be able to hear that message and hear that beep. So they know once they hear that, then the audience can hear them. They'll be connected to the audience, and then On24 is going to also begin capturing the webcast. One thing to remember, and I kind of touched on this in our first training, is that your attendees can show up 15 minutes early. So that means 15 minutes before the webcast, they can gain entry into this console, into the actual webcast. So the thing you want to keep in mind is once you get to that 15-minute mark, make sure that whatever slide you want them to see when they log in is where the live marker is. So this is most likely going to be your title slide, because once you see attendees start to appear in this list, if you have a presenter that decides to go through the slides before you hit Start Live, the audience is going to see that movement. So just make sure that, once you get 15 minutes out, that you say, okay, please don't transition any slides. We're going to go back to the title slide since people are logging in, because they'll be able to see any movement that you make. When the webcast is over, you've had your Q&A, you've said your conclusion, thank you for coming, the producer will then press Stop Live. And at that point, you'll be disconnected from your audience, but the line will remain open for 30 minutes. So that way you and your team can have a post call, go over any details, pats on the back, things that we did well, maybe things we want to consider next time. So that conference bridge will stay open for 30 minutes after the Stop Live is pressed. And like I said, once you press Stop Live, you'll be disconnected from the audience, so they're not going to be able to listen in on your post call. Also, once you press that Stop Live, On24 is going to begin preparing the webcast for on-demand viewing, and that process takes 30 minutes. So if your webcast ends at 10 a.m., then that means at 10:30 a.m., people can go back and watch it on demand. Now, going back to the webcast URLs, so again, if you open up the webcast, you'll notice the webcast URLs are here in the upper right-hand corner. This audience URL that they're going to be using to register and attend the live webcast is the same exact URL that they're going to use to watch it on demand. So the link does not change, and you don't have to worry about distributing a brand new link. All right. Okay, great question by Karina. Is the Start Live button only pressable by the producer, or can presenters press it as well? Only the producer can press it, so that's why it's mandatory, really, for you to have at least one person logged in as the producer. All right. So that basically wraps up what I had to show you today. Before we go, and of course, still answer your questions, because I ask your questions because I know it's a lot. And when you log into Webcast Elite, you've got this help link here in the upper right-hand corner. And this help link takes you to our Help Center. And in the Help Center, we have a folder. Obviously, we've got tutorials, best practices, but we have a folder for presenting a live webcast, which is what you guys will be doing. The very first page here is the PMXD user guide. Everything that I just showed you is broken down step by step on this page. including screenshots and so on. But if you have presenters that you just want to kind of give them an overview of the platform, this is a great video that they can watch that's going to give them an overview of PMXD and how it works. So if you have to get your presenters prepped and you just want to kind of give them an overview of how PMXD works, you can send them the link here from our Help Center and they can watch this video. Also, we do have a presenter/producer checklist. So if you have somebody on your team that's going to be in charge, or maybe you're the person in charge of getting all the presenters organized and making sure everybody has what they need before the live webcast, we have this checklist just to kind of walk you through of all the things you're going to want to make sure that you distribute to them, making sure they have the present URL, making sure they have the dial-in number and the passcode for the phone bridge, confirming when you guys will start, but also making sure they know to dial in 30 minutes early. Define what role they're going to be logging in as. So if they're going to log in as a producer or a presenter, make sure you specify that. How you're going to handle the Q&A. Are you going to do folders? Are you going to have one person reading the questions out loud to the presenters? Those are all important details you want to establish before the live webcast. Now, during the 30-minute pre-call, since you guys are going to dial in 30 minutes early, these are the things that you'll want to go over during the pre-call. Doing a sound check. Have everybody state their name and count to 5 to make sure they sound clear. The big thing to that is, making sure nobody's presenting from a cell phone because the quality isn't great. So using a handheld telephone or a headset, a good quality headset, just something to be mindful of. Also, there's no way for you to mute the other presenters. So maybe a rule that you have is, if it's not your turn to talk, go ahead and mute your phone. So that way there's no background noise and you don't pick up, people in your office talking. So if you're not speaking or you don't have a speaking role, you can just mute your phone. So that way it'll cut down on the background noise. All right. So question, do you provide someone from On24 to support the live webinar at any point during the webinar, beginning at the end? Karina, I would definitely check with Ruth, but typically we provide a monitor, an On24 monitor for your first live event for free. So that monitor would be responsible for intercepting any technical questions that come through during the Q&A, and so that monitor is going to be dialed in 30 minutes early for the 30-minute pre-call, and they'll be there for the duration of the webcast, so they'll be there for the 90 minutes. So 30 minutes before, and then, if your webcast is an hour, they'll be there for the duration of the webcast. So that's something that, you can verify with Ruth, but that's typically how we do it. So you'll have your first event monitored for free by us. Okay, so Lark asked a great question. How do we handle technical questions that come in through the audience? Who do we refer them to? Well, the first thing I want to show you is here in our Help Center, we have canned responses for live Q&A. Typically, the questions that you're going to get as far as the technical questions go is, the slides aren't moving or the slides get stuck. And I'll tell you that 90% of the technical questions that come in from the audience are usually easily fixed by them simply refreshing the page. So, if they're a Windows user, they can hit F5 on the keyboard and it'll refresh the page for them, or if they're on a Mac, they can do Command R for Macs. But as far as the answers to the technical questions, you can find them here in the canned responses, or on the audience console by default, all the attendees are going to have this help widget here. So you can also refer them to the help widget. And this help widget has all the technical FAQs. This is obviously in a different language, but that's just because that's how I have this event set up. But for your audience, it'll be in English. But this just gives them all the technical FAQs. They can test their system here, and this will basically just making sure they have an internet connection and so on. And it'll test to make sure their player's working right. So you can always refer them to the help widget on their console, but like I said, you can just copy and paste the answer to those questions from the canned responses here. We have a live event emergency line for elite users. So in our help center, if you click on help, the very first page is called Get Help Now. And if you scroll down, we have a live event emergency number. This number, however, is not for audience support. It's for you guys, the organizers, the licensed On24 users. So if your webcast starts and if a question comes in that's something outside of the usual canned responses that we have here, because like I said, in these responses there are troubleshooting tips for the audience, so you're not going to be on your own. But if it is a live event emergency, sorry, I keep minimizing, I have way too many windows open, you can call us at the live event emergency number. And again, always make sure you have your event ID handy, because that's going to be the first thing they ask for. So you would give us a call at this number.
That's right. I know you won't. Did you hear about the webcam?
If someone can't access the event, that could be a number of things. It depends on the security that you have for the event, making sure that you give them the audience URL. So really, because once they get that audience URL, if it's their first time clicking on that link, they'll be prompted to register, and then once they registered, they'd be cookied in. So they would just open up the audience URL to gain entry into the webcast. So, a lot of times that's really it. Like they're clicking on the wrong link. So if you have somebody that can't get in, that's usually why, because the audience URL. We do not have live audience support. I know that's a question Lark just asked. We do not have live audience support. So if it's major technical issues for that person, I would call the live event emergency line and ask for assistance and say, I have someone that is having this issue. Because if it's user specific, it's kind of hard to tell. It could be their web browser. It could be the network congestion maybe on their end. So it's hard to narrow it down, because if it's not a widespread problem, it's usually going to be something just on that user's computer, network, the way that their browser's configured. But you can always call us at that emergency line and see if we can offer some assistance. Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
Sorry, I just felt like speaking my question. So
yeah, that's fine.
Will we have a backup dial-in number for the audience if, say, they can't hear the audio for some reason and we can't figure out what the technical problem is?
You mean like if you want to give your audience an option to listen over the phone? Is that what you're asking?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. We can set an audience phone bridge up for you, but there would be an additional fee for that. If you have your own audience, if you have your own phone bridge that you want to use as the audience bridge, you can do that, but you would have to know how to. My only caution to that is, because I don't know what vendor you guys use, is that if you do plan on providing your own phone bridge for audience members to listen in on, you would have to know, I would recommend being able to mute them, because you don't want the audience trying to talk over the presenters, because that would be, crazy. But also knowing what kind of capacity your conference line has, because if you have, 500 attendees and you're offering that number to everyone, that's another thing to consider. You can always certainly use your own bridge as an audience dial-in number, but you would need to know, up front, is there a way for you to mute the audience so they don't interrupt you guys, and also how to sync it into the conference bridge, like the presenter bridge.
Okay. And is there like a limit on how many people can dial into the presenter bridge?
It's 10 presenters.
Okay.
I would not, you don't,
like an emergency, I guess.
yeah, and even with that, like we don't want you to distribute that presenter bridge to the audience, because once they dial in, you can't control that line. So if you have an audience member dial in to your presenter line, they can talk, they can ask questions out loud, they can interrupt you. So that's why it's a little bit dangerous. But if you are worried about that, what I would suggest is on your registration page, if you think that's going to be an issue, there's a couple of things you could do. When you're building your registration page, maybe in the promotional summary area in this section, it may not be a bad idea if you're worried to have like a little blurb and say, there is no phone dial-in for this presentation. Please make sure your computer speakers are not muted or you have a headset handy, because this presentation will be streaming audio to your computer. So that's something that that messaging you could include on the registration page so people see it. Also, you can add that message as a text widget on your console. So if you go into your console builder for that webcast, let me delete this because it's in my way. You can tell I was in here playing around earlier. What you could do is just go into your widgets, add a text widget, and remember you can format this to say whatever you want. And so maybe, I think I have something on my, like here's just kind of a catch-all that I post sometimes, is this message here. So just letting the audience know you can listen to the presentation through headphones or your computer speakers. The webinar will be available on demand shortly after it finishes. If the presentation stops, try refreshing your browser. That way you're kind of covered.
Yeah. Okay. Great, thanks.
Sure.
And sorry, I have one more question.
Sure, no. Yeah, ask away.
I wasn't here on Monday, so I was only able to listen to like 45 minutes of the recording, but did we go over how to do a practice run with the presenters? Do we use the preview link, or are we just logging in as if we were presenting, it just won't go live, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all you're going to do is when you're doing a rehearsal, all the presenters and anybody on the presenting team is going to log in to PMXD through the presenter link. And then what you can do is, if you're going to be kind of checking to make sure everything looks good as everybody's, transitioning through, just have the preview URL open in a separate window. So that way you can watch things and make sure, or you can have somebody else that's not going to be presenting just watching through the preview URL as you're rehearsing to make sure everything looks good.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because as long as, PMXD is pretty much always in practice mode as long as that Start Live button isn't pressed. So you can log in as many times as you want, as early as you want, and practice and rehearse and make sure everything's good. So, and of course, we certainly encourage you to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions, guys? All right. Well, what I'm going to do now is I'll just go ahead and stop the recording.